Has an initial budget been set out for the new Stargate series? And is it a little disappointing? Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. So if you are a regular Sidetracker, you'll know that I have contacts that work in and around MGM. You'll also know that over the last couple of weeks there's been big meetings between the chief executives at MGM and Amazon at MGM's film headquarters in Beverly Hills. Part of those discussions were centered around Stargate as well as other big projects that are planned for the next couple of years. We also know that Brad Wright has submitted a pilot script for a new Stargate series. We know that MGM is seriously considering about pushing forwards with this series and that Amazon are really keen for Stargate to return to our screens. So why would the budget already be planned out? Well, before they get to the green light stage, there are many people that look at what the Stargate series would potentially cost. They consider things like how many episodes does Amazon want? How long the episodes would be, how many cast and crew would be required for Brad Wright's vision to be fulfilled, how long would they have to rent the sound stage for, what are the sort of location costs for filming, a sort of a time frame for filming, how long it would take, as well as legal and other fees. There are people at MGM that are very good at estimating these costs. They have come up with a figure. Now, before I tell you how much they're thinking this show will cost, I have to tell you that these are initial budgets and they're estimates. Once the show is greenlit, all of these things are sort of gone through again. There would be a script for more episodes, etc. And there would be far more detailed plans, and the budget would obviously be re-estimated. But at the moment, they do have a figure in mind, and it does tell us a lot about how much emphasis Amazon and MGM are putting on this new project. Because at the end of the day, part of also this estimation is based on what Amazon think the show is worth to them. Basically, how much they're willing to pay for the product. Before I tell you the actual figure, let's put a little bit of context in. So, The Expanse, series a lot of us loved, cost around about $3.5 million an episode to produce. Between some cost less, some cost a bit more, but $3.5 million an episode is roughly the average. If we look at Game of Thrones, for example, which is a big, lavish production, HBO always invested $100 million a series, even back when it was still a massive risk and wasn't the big, phenomenal success it became. It was $100 million a series. Towards the end, where they did less episodes per series, Game of Thrones cost around $15 million an episode to produce. Netflix are currently producing a series of The Last Airbender. This is again another series which is a bit of a risk. There was a movie, it was a huge flop. There was a cartoon that was actually pretty cool. But producing the TV series is a risk for Netflix. But they're still willing to invest anything up to $15 million an episode. We think about The Lord of the Rings. Now that is just squillions, that's just ridiculous amount of money, and we shouldn't compare Stargate to that at all, but it does show what Amazon are willing to spend on a project if they think it's worthwhile. So, what sort of things should we be comparing this budget to? For me, I think Stargate should be looking at Star Trek. That should be the goal. That should be, from a production value point of view at least, what we're looking to achieve with Stargate. So for me again, what Star Trek spend on per episode is relevant to what I would hope they would spend on Stargate. If that is what Stargate hopes to aspire to, then I would hope that the budget would be similar. Now, Picard, Series 1 and 2, have roughly cost $9 million an episode, and to be honest, Disco costs about the same, a little less, $8 to $8.5 million an episode. So for me, I would hope that the budget for a series of Stargate would be in and around that area. Sadly, it isn't. At the moment, it looks like the estimation is for around $16 million for a series. That series would be an estimated 10 or 12 episodes, and that would basically mean $5 to $6 million per episode. Now, I actually think for a returning franchise, something that hasn't been on our screens for 15 years, and at the end of the day, it's 5 times more than Brad Wright got first time round, because Stargate SG-1's initial budget was only $900,000 an episode. Also, because it's on a streaming service, Brad Wright does have a lot of flexibility here. He could do a 13-episode series if he wanted to, if the story dictated it. And he could stretch the budget a little further. Or he could maybe do 8 or 9 episodes if, again, that's what the story needed, and he could spend a lot more on it per episode. Once this project is greenlit and Brad Wright has full control, because it's a streaming service, he really does have a lot more power than when it was back on a network and it was 22 episodes, this is what we need to fill in our schedule, just do it. But as I say, I am a little bit disappointed. I would have hoped the budget would be in and around the $9 to $10 million area so that it could compete with Star Trek. I would expect the demographic for the sort of people that will be watching this show is very similar to Star Trek's. But Amazon are looking at demographics. They are looking at surveys that have been sent out asking people, do you want to watch Stargate? They do look at the viewing figures of Stargate, and things like Stargate appearing on Pluto in the United States now is a big show of how much people actually want to watch the show. Amazon will take all those figures, they will do lots of graphs, I imagine, and they will figure out what they think the product is worth. But this is only the first series, and it is only the first run of the series, so 10 or 12 episodes. That doesn't necessarily mean that would be the full series. It might just be what Amazon are willing to buy initially. So we could see potentially more episodes than that in a first series. Or we could see, similarly to Star Wars, 2 or 3 different series running alongside each other per year. So even though we only might get a 10 or 12 episode run, we actually might get anything up to 30 episodes per year. The flexibility of Stargate appearing on a streaming service, I think, is actually a really positive thing, and I think will produce a far more interesting TV show in the end. The one thing, though, I would say is that until a project is greenlit, these are all just estimates. I remember a story about Gene Roddenberry in Star Trek The Next Generation. He realised that the budget basically wasn't going to allow them to build a set for engineering. Engineering didn't appear in the initial pilot anywhere. So he was fearful that if the engineering didn't get built in the initial stages of production, that it never would be, because the budget would never allow it. So he immediately went back, rewrote the pilot, and wrote in a scene that required engineering. He got his set. And that is a big point to make with a lot of these TV shows, that a lot of the expense comes from the initial setup. A lot of the expense comes from building the initial sets that they're going to use day in, day out. So if Brad Wright is smart, and at the end of the day, we know he is, he could actually get a lot more bang for his buck. We know that he did SG-1, for example, on a very small budget and really got great production value for it. We also know that Stargate isn't necessarily as CGI driven as Star Trek. There might not be as many virtual sets and off-world sets and things. Also, you can run around a quarry and make it look very alien. Brad Wright's an expert at that. Stargate is more grounded in reality, and therefore the actual initial cost of setting up the show might not be as much as Star Trek. So we might actually get just as good production value. And say what you like about Star Trek, it's a beautifully made show. It might not be a particularly entertaining show or well written or makes sense at times, but it is a beautifully produced show. If we want to get that sort of production value, we might actually be able to get it for a much lower cost. And maybe that explains why these valuations of what the series would cost and the initial budget is significantly lower than what Star Trek costs. So, please, get in the comments and tell me what you think. Do you think these initial budgets are fair? Do you think they're a reasonable expectation of what a show like Stargate coming back for the first time would expect to see? And, Series 2, Series 3, Series 4 might have much bigger budgets if the show's successful. Or do you think this is a concern? Do you think that a lot of the rumours that have been coming out about Amazon thinking that Stargate is the sleeping giant of sci-fi and a show that they desperately want back on screens as quickly as possible maybe isn't being fulfilled at the moment? And maybe MGM and Amazon aren't as behind this show as we thought? Get in the comments, tell me exactly what you think. And if you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, it really helps us out. Also, consider becoming a fully fledged side trekker. Hit the join button. As always, guys, please stay safe. I'll see you next time.